light within my heart, light within my thoughts, light within my words. May one and all and everything, blessed and loved, ever be. Welcome. I am Sister Who. In this current age of technological innovation, it is perhaps understandable and wonderful that we have all these new abilities. Even this show itself is an example of how technology has become accessible and doable for a great many more people, that we can create this show essentially within the privacy of my own home and launch it onto or upload it to the internet and have it seen by people literally all over the world. And at the time of this recording, the subscribers to my YouTube channel now number over 1,100, so it's kind of amazing to think that anytime I upload a new show, 1,100 people get notified that I have put that up there, and I hope that I'm doing an effective job of serving that population, though I rarely hear from quite a few, well, the majority of them. I do get some comments from viewers, but not that many in comparison to considering that there's 1,100 people who will be notified of the show and may watch it. The thing I guess that I'm concerned about in all of that, though, even having my own TV show, yes, it's wonderful. Thank you very much for watching. Please keep doing so, but I don't want us to be dependent upon technology. And I don't want Sister Who to be only an internet phenomena, that there is a me that exists in real life as well. The real me that has hiked to the top of 15 of Colorado's highest mountains and is thrilled to help out with various fundraisers and community events, and to sit and listen to anyone who would like to talk or pray or discuss a challenging subject. For a number of years, I had a portable chapel that I constructed that I took to some metaphysical fairs here in Denver, Colorado. That opportunity has since passed at the time of this videotaping. I'm hoping it will return at some point, because I really would like to use the portable chapel again and to meet with people in that direct sort of way where I can talk with them and they can talk with me, and there's no distance, there's no aloofness. As much as technology purports to bring us closer by letting us talk to people around the world, it also creates distance where people are not seeing each other's faces. And the numerous friends I have who will send me a message on Facebook but would not consider picking up the phone and calling me, or sitting down with a piece of paper and a pen and actually writing a letter. The challenge of technology is that it be an addition to our knowledge and our expertise and our ability, and not a substitution. It may be extremely convenient to have a computer that understands a human voice and that can speak in return, so that it becomes a free-flowing and fast-moving conversation. The danger in that becomes if that becomes the only thing of which we're capable, and we forget how to write. Even cursive writing is no longer taught in schools, I'm told. So that if I sign my name in cursive, there are a growing number of people in this very developed country who wouldn't be able to read it. And of course, some people would say, considering their penmanship, no one could read their handwriting anyway. For better or for worse, I went through 6 years of Catholic grade school, and I sometimes joke with people that you can tell the people who went to Catholic school because they're the ones whose penmanship you can read, because writing cursive legibly was something so drilled into us there. And there was one temporary job I had in an office where the owners of the company assigned the task of signing all of the company greeting cards to me, because they wanted to send holiday greeting cards to their primary customers, but no one else in the office had legible handwriting. So thank you to dear sister Rosemarie. I could sit down and sign whatever they wanted written in these letters, and it was totally legible. In any case, what this points to is the possibility of the human race even becoming disempowered by that which was intended to empower them. That for all the abilities that technology brings, creating television shows and recordings and books for a fraction of what the traditional cost is or was, that for all of that, you could wind up with a population that doesn't know how to read or write anymore, because they can speak to their computer. They don't have to be able to read anything. If they can't read it, they have the computer read it to them, and they listen to how it sounds. That still would say, well, what about learning foreign languages? Or does it add more pressure to there being only one language? Well, the problem with only one language is it actually limits your vocabulary, limits your expression, and makes a whole lot of things inexpressible that may currently be expressible but in another language. There are words between languages that don't translate, for example. One of the, perhaps the most common one that I heard studying German for 4 years in high school was the word Gemütlichkeit. There is no English equivalent to it. It denotes a feeling, a context, a sentiment, but it's complex. There's no single English word that translates as that. In a similar sort of way, if you try to translate English into Russian, it becomes problematic, because the Russian language does not have the articles or the be verbs. Is, are, was, were, am, being, been. All of those don't exist in Russian, because they have an understanding that if the thing didn't already exist, there would be nothing to say it about. And so to say the man is tall is being redundant. It would simply be the tall man or the man tall, but is redundant, because you wouldn't be saying it if the man didn't already exist. These are differences in languages. We have different ways of organizing our thoughts and different ways of expressing things. Could we talk in multiple languages with a computer? Perhaps, but then you have reduced language to being only an auditory phenomena and not a written or readable one. And if you depend upon a computer to read your emails to you, then you are also dependent upon electricity and upon the people who manufacture the computer. I would imagine that 99% of the people who use computers don't have the first clue of how to build one. That if there were a war or a disaster, a tornado, a flood, whatever, they would have to wait for new computers to be shipped in, because they wouldn't know how to function without them, and they wouldn't know how to build one themselves. What all of this could be, the positive way of interpreting all of this is that this is our wake-up call to say we need to build the abilities into ourselves. We need to know the languages, we need to know the writing, we need to know how to build things. We need to know if it's all gone through theft or disaster or war or whatever it is, that how do we start over and build again? How do we restart and get back to what we have known? How do we keep any particular disaster from being the end of our quality of life? And how do we expand that quality of life so that it includes all of the people with whom we would need to collaborate to restart it if anything went wrong? there are people who are difficult for me to relate to, but I try to keep them in my life because of the ways we collaborate. It's not that we intend to use each other in some abusive sort of fashion, but that we recognize there is a symbiotic relationship. That there are things I can do for my mechanic that my mechanic cannot do for himself, and that there are things that I can do for my computer programmer that my computer programmer cannot do for herself. And there are things that I can do for my business manager that my business manager cannot do for herself. And there are things I can do for my doctor that my doctor cannot do for himself. It's a symbiotic kind of relationship. Each of us giving to the other what they need but cannot produce for themselves, and so by both of us surviving, both of us survive. But left to ourselves, it's questionable whether either one of us would survive for very long. That's different, however, from the situation we have with technology, where we're dependent upon suppliers and dependent upon resources that we cannot control. And then when the capitalistic economic system that seems to be fairly global at the present time puts a price tag on things, so that in order to have access to the technology that allows this quality of life to happen, there also has to be this earned income of some sort. And ultimately what you wind up with is a kind of a treadmill that it's basically maintaining cutting edge technology in one's life becomes a form of slavery, where somebody else gets to decide when you will change your operating system, when you will change your computer, when you will change all the different programs that you're using, because we have new versions now, and of course you have to upgrade, or at some point we run into compatibility issues, that the computer won't talk to the printer, which won't talk to the camera, which won't talk to the keyboard, which won't talk to the scanner or the fax machine. In order for all of these things to collaborate, they have to maintain a common language. In order for humanity to continue to collaborate, we have to find common languages, but it's not always insisting upon a common language as much as it is learning each other's language. And then one gets to the realm of autistic people, where language is not just words and letters. Language may be colors or actions or emotions or relationships. All of these things can convey language. And of course, for deaf people, language is three-dimensional. It has height, it has width, it has depth. It's motion, it's kinesthetic, it's kinetic energy, the energy of motion. Understanding all of those things and being always open to learning more is what keeps humanity reinventing itself and progressing into ever and ever better forms. As we embrace the new form, though, it is imperative that we not forget the old one, because those are the forms that brought us to this point. And if we do not allow for utilizing those methods in extenuating circumstances, we have essentially painted ourselves into a corner within which there is no way to survive or to continue forward. It's a long story how I got to that situation, but at one point in time, I was considering a housing situation, I was attempting a housing situation in which the people involved refused to provide accurate and complete information. I wound up coming to a house that ostensibly nobody wanted. It was an abandoned house. And in fact, the title had been deeded over to me for a short time. But then there was this argument about whether, even though I owned it, the home ownership had been deprived of its meaning, and I allegedly wasn't allowed to live in it. And Of course, the price was so low because of the condition it was in. I came to that house, though, with knowledge and inventiveness and ingenuity and a determination to survive. And so when I arrived there at 5:30 in the evening, it's just gotten dark, and discovered that, contrary to all reports, there's only one working electrical outlet. There's no insulation in the house. I could plug in one little electric heater, but with no insulation, there was no way to get warm enough to warm any space within the house. And on top of it all, it was in January, and the temperature that night was plunging to minus 20 degrees Fahrenheit. So using my ingenuity, my service dog and my 2 emotional support dogs and I basically set up a folding table, covered it with blankets, and put the one little electric heater I had underneath there, and that's how we survived the night and began putting our lives back together. Well, then we found over the next few weeks that the surrounding community wasn't willing to let us live there, even though I now presumably owned the house. And it escalated in negative directions. But what I'm trying to point out to that is that it comes back to how we need to be able to rely on ourselves, and we need to be able to rely on each other. That whole night, when, actually for the first 3 nights that we were there, my 3 dogs and I huddled under this table covered with blankets with a single electric heater in order to keep from freezing to death. There were houses for a mile around us in every direction that were adequately heated, that had people living in them who could have helped but chose not to. They didn't know me, I didn't know them, I didn't know how to approach them, I was not from the area. They did not extend any kindness to strangers. And because we were separate from each other, there was effective collaboration that didn't happen, that I guess you could say couldn't happen. And we were all the poorer for it. They missed the opportunity to make a new friend and to have a person of significant ingenuity in their social circle, so that whatever problems they had that I might have been able to help them resolve, they didn't get my help. And in a similar way, I didn't know how to bridge the gap, and so whatever help they could have offered, I didn't get. I still found a way to survive. Without a computer, without a telephone, without a furnace, even without running water, I found a way to survive. And it was not in 100 years ago or the early 20th century. That was in the 21st century when that happened. There seems to be this assumption for those who have these devices of technology that they have somehow magically appeared everywhere, and that the whole world is now one big, well-developed, well-equipped urban society, when in fact, looking at the landmass of the entire planet, urban societies are actually way, way in the minority, and the majority of the world remains very agrarian, and the majority of it remains without power lines and plumbing systems and water treatment systems. There are a great many places all around the world where the human family is struggling to survive yet. It is not something just out of the history books. It is still going on. The fact that we don't see it doesn't make it any less real, especially to those who are going through it. I can only imagine how betrayed they may feel for having been left behind by urban humanity. How much their existence and the ways that we are becoming increasingly aware of them as people travel and bring back reports, or somebody goes out into a rural area with a phone and suddenly there's information coming in. Or we can now find out what the weather is on the other side of the planet and watch the evening news in Beijing or Tokyo or Sydney. There's a sense in which our world is the same size it's always been, and there's a sense in which it's becoming smaller and smaller thanks to our technology. What I'm concerned about is that we don't become smaller and smaller in response to our technology, that we continue to expand our spirits and our minds and expand our hearts. Alongside of all of this, something I haven't touched on yet as we're starting to wind down here, the whole realm of religious domination and religious abuse. The ways that especially in past centuries, but still to a large extent, religion encourages a kind of dependency upon certain beliefs and precepts and a sort of learned helplessness that if someone can be convinced that you must have the blessing of the pastor or the priest or the rabbi or the imam or whomever, that you must have that blessing in order to have a meaningful, purposeful life, in order to marry and have children, in order to come to terms with grief when a loved one passes away. It creates a dependency. I would like to think it's a more medieval idea, but maybe it is a medieval idea that's still around, that a cleric of whatever description can threaten one's eternal destiny, that there may be a fundamentalist, extremist minister of some sort who says, do what I tell you or you will go to hell, as if that person had any control over it. To the best of my knowledge, God doesn't consult any human cleric when determining someone's eternal destiny, assuming that explanation of eternal destiny even really applies, but I guess we'll find out when we get there. But to manipulate someone in that sort of way, that you would take their peace of mind, that you would take their spiritual health, possibly even their psychological and emotional health, in order to manipulate them. I mean, it's a form of slavery, again, and a form of abuse. It does not nurture this person to be the holistic, healthy fusion of body, mind, and spirit that I believe God intended. For each individual, each totally unique individual on this planet to reach his or her maximum potential, they must be nurtured and supported, empowered to act on their own behalf, to act in their own best interest, to sift through the information until they can discern for themselves what is in their own best interest. There have been various justifications I've heard for not telling the public everything because the public can't handle it. Well, if the public can't handle it, it's because someone didn't do their job. It is the job, in my opinion, of administrators and educators to equip people to do what needs to be done in the face of whatever challenges life throws at them. It would be ideal, I suppose, if the computers were always there, if the power never failed, if the educational system worked perfectly so that we all came out well-educated adults, able to think and discern creatively and constructively and effectively within all diverse situations, so that if there was a flood or a tornado, we wouldn't have to wait for a federal agency to arrive to tell us what to do. We would already know what to do. We would know how to respond to disasters, how to work together, how to form a team, how to negotiate with someone with whom there is radical disagreement on the right way to proceed. How do we take the best of this person's plan and the best of that person's plan and weave them together? How do we each kneel down in prayer and commune or meditate or whatever form of visualization or communication one wishes to envision, cast a spell, perform a ritual, whatever it is, that when we are faced with mystery and there are no answers and we still have to find sufficient sanity to go on and to rebuild and to relearn and to become stronger and better for what we have survived. That we have built enough strength within ourselves to do it. I believe the potential is there. I don't believe it's going to happen, however, if we put all of our trust in technology any more than people in the Middle Ages put all of their trust in the church to act as government and religious advisor, and in some cases even humanitarian provider. Putting everything in one direction is contrary to the diversity we see every time we look in the mirror. There are billions of us, and each one is unique, and each one has something to contribute. That is the strength that we can bring to technology, and that will remain whenever technology fails, for as long or short a time as technology fails. If we have it in ourselves, we will survive. Thank you for watching.